Thank you for the introduction. So I'll just sort of briefly say that I'm really excited to talk about this today. It's something that gained my attention a couple of years ago. I did my thesis research on sodium reduction in blue cheese, and so it doesn't really have much to do with raw milk except for, well, raw milk cheese, and that was last year. So I have seen many different talks about this subject, one of them especially by Stephanie, which was fantastic at an IFT meeting. There's a lot of attention paid to this subject, and there's no way we can talk about all of it in 12 minutes, and so I've brought up some interesting points. So if I say anything that really rubs you the wrong way, feel free to bring it up. Don't shoot the messenger, but feel free to bring it up at the end, so thanks. I'd also like to point out that we are fortunate. So we are fortunate to live in a country where most of what we consume is regarded as safe, and most of what we eat won't hurt us. I also think that we are fortunate to live in a society where we can talk about this openly and freely, and you can have your opinion, and you can voice your opinion to the government and suffer said consequences, but more or less, they're not going to be that severe. Okay, so what is raw milk? The U.S. Food and Drug Administration defines raw milk as milk from a cow, sheep, or goat that is not pasteurized in order to kill harmful bacteria. The conditions in this chart here are from the Pasteurized Milk Ordinance. The Pasteurized Milk Ordinance is updated every couple of years. You can access it online for free, download the PDF, print it out, keep it on your bookshelf. The Pasteurized Milk Ordinance is sort of the base standard for regulations in terms of production, handling, pasteurization, and distribution of milk. Many states have more strict requirements than are laid out by the PMO, but that's just sort of what you go to for your base standard. It was initiated in 1924, and as I said, it's updated every couple of years. So we know that pasteurization has its history with Louis Pasteur, but when did it start to play a role in milk and milk products? In the late 1800s, tuberculosis was the big player. So tuberculosis was killing people by the thousands, and it was sort of suggested that related to milk specifically. And it was suggested that a low-time, low-temperature process used to pasteurize milk could decrease the incidence of tuberculosis-related deaths. This worked very well. It's ultimately regarded as an incredible success story. Tuberculosis deaths went down dramatically after pasteurization, and if you look on CDC's website today, it's not even on their radar. It's not an issue anymore, so that's great. One of the first places where pasteurization of milk became a legal requirement was Chicago, Illinois in 1908. And an underlying theme of what I'll be talking about today is urban migration. So in the early 1900s, when pasteurization started to become more important to milk, populations such as Chicago were, so 1.7 million. The population of Chicago today is 2.7 million. So in the same amount of space, and I mean the Chicago city lines, not suburbs and whatnot, in the same amount of space, you've packed 1 million more people into there. I think this room generally understands the milk system and the pasteurized milk retail system with bulk distribution and whatnot. So to expect that raw milk could be safely distributed to 2.7 million people packed into the city space of Chicago, that it would take 3 hours to get to a farm, it's risky business. So here I've got a picture from the early 1900s. Is this a laser pointer? Yes. Okay, so here's your milkman with his safe milk pasteurized. So maybe we should start labeling safe milk and have it instead of healthy milk in your, Okay. So in 2005 to 2006, there was a study done to decide or to categorize how people can consume milk. Because one of the things that sort of sets raw milk apart from, say, raw beef is that you don't cook it. Consumers don't do anything to it when they take it home. They drink it plain. They drink it plain in cereal. They have it plain added to another beverage, or they drink a flavored milk beverage. Those are the 4 major categories of consumption. And so that's an important sort of tidbit to keep in mind when you're thinking about raw milk. No one's doing anything to it when they take it home. They're drinking it right off the shelf. Okay, so this is what the CDC says. From 1998 to 2011, 79% of dairy outbreaks were from raw products. This includes cheese as well. And like I said, raw cheese and the issues surrounding raw cheese products are for another day. And then 148 outbreaks were from raw milk specifically. This led to over 2,000 illnesses, 284 hospitalizations, and 2 deaths. And so this is in a fairly wide time span. And then 82% of the people that were affected were under the age of 20. So we know that anytime there is an outbreak or anytime there is a major epidemic, the people that are going to be most affected are young children, immunocompromised, and elderly. So it's 82%, that's a powerful number. So the people that are being affected are young people. The outbreaks are most often related to E. coli, Campylobacter, Salmonella, and Listeria. We hear these names a lot, or at least I do, and I think sometimes they lose their power. The long-term effects of E. coli, Campylobacter, Salmonella, and Listeria, yeah, sure, maybe. I've got a friend who had Salmonella once from an egg. He was sick for 2 weeks, he lost 14 pounds, and then he was fine. So he was 18 years old, he was very healthy, his immune system was fine, he got over it. But for every story of a mother who fed their child raw milk and they got over their allergies, there's another story of a mother who fed their child raw milk and they have kidney failure, so they have to undergo dialysis for the rest of their life. Or a woman drank raw milk and by the time she got to the hospital, she was paralyzed. So this is nothing to mess around with. And I don't necessarily mean to victimize anyone that believes that raw milk is good or drinks it at a farm in a safe condition, but I just don't think that we should push aside the fact that we're talking about E. coli, Campylobacter, Salmonella, and Listeria. These guys are serious bugs. All right, so some counter arguments. And I got this information from the Weston A. Price Foundation and realmilk.com. If you Google raw milk, you'll get more hits of positive raw milk messages than you will negative raw milk messages right away. And so when the average consumer Googles raw milk, this is what they're seeing first. So the Weston A. Price Foundation claims that the CDC cherry-picked their data. They say that 315 reported illnesses were from dairy, and that's in the same time span that I mentioned before, and that 203 of them were from pasteurized products, and 112 of them were from raw. Now, first of all, I don't really know where they got these numbers. If the CDC cherry-picked their data, then where did you get this data that the CDC did not report? Because they're not lying. It's a government agency. Well, I hope they're not lying. Snowden might have a different opinion. But okay, fine. Saying that this is true, if you think about the production of raw milk products as compared to the production of pasteurized milk products, these numbers aren't equal in terms of how many more pasteurized milk products there are in terms as a percentage of consumption and outbreak. Okay, they also say that dairy products have a relatively small level of outbreaks in comparison to other foods. Okay, that's an interesting point. I don't necessarily think that that is a point in favor of consuming raw milk. I think it's great that milk products have lower incidences of outbreaks than other foods, but I mean, as I said before, we're talking E. coli, Salmonella. In my opinion, a 0 incidence rate would make me happy because I don't want my kid to be that kid. Realmilk.com, so they talk a lot about how pasteurization lessens the benefits of milk. And I think this is the part where everything gets fuzzy because there aren't any conclusive studies. I think it's hard for scientists to decide and say, okay, yes, we're finally going to put our fist down and say there's no difference in the health benefits. All the studies end with, further research is needed, or, oh, it was significant here but not there. So obviously pasteurization is going to inactivate some enzymes. Obviously, it's killing bacteria, that's what it's for. But there have not been any conclusive studies that say that the differences of pasteurization make a pasteurized product worse for you or worse than raw milk. And I also, I know that there are a lot of people, if you watch, there's a Harvard Law School debate. It's about an hour long. There's a lot of people in the audience that are pro raw milk. And so if you skip to the end, and you can get all of the mothers who are saying, my child had allergies, they drank raw milk, and now they don't have allergies. Or my child was small and wasn't gaining weight, and we started feeding it raw milk, and he, raw milk, and they gained weight at a tremendous speed, and everything was wonderful. And so it's hard because those people have points and those people have voices, but I want to make a regulation that's going to benefit the majority of consumers, and the majority of consumers aren't going to be able to get a safe product, and I don't want to put those people at risk, and I think that's where regulation has to put their foot down. There are a lot of people in this country, so your one kid isn't going to make the case. I'm sorry. They also have a lot of cases in that debate that you could look up that was done at Harvard. A nutritionist says, oh, well, there was this study where they fed one calf all pasteurized milk, and they fed the other calf all raw milk. And after a month, this calf had shinier hair, and was bigger than the other one, and he had bigger testes. Ha ha ha. Okay, you're all scientists. If someone came to you with a study and the sample size was 1, you would put it down. I mean, like, that's not even. Also, that study was done in like 1938, 1940. Things have changed so much since 1938, 1940 in terms of food safety and our food systems and the milk system in general. It's just not valid anymore. And I think you just have to, we all kind of think that when we hear it and we are like, I don't know. Okay, I'll just say it. It's not valid. All right, so recent outbreaks, and this is just looking up a tabular form of outbreaks. I tried to skip any of the ones that were about cheese, again, just to try to focus on the milk. And so raw products, the most recent ones, we've got 3 cases of Campylobacter in different states, although Alaska had 2, that kind of stinks. And then in 2012, we got some E. coli, some Campylobacter, some Cryptosporidium. In March, there was E. coli. We've got 5, 31, 21, 14 people ill. In terms of pasteurized products, yeah, pasteurized products still have outbreaks. I'm certainly not going to stand here and say that pasteurized milk has no outbreaks. There's no way to guarantee that the milk that you're putting into your mouth isn't contaminated, but your odds are better with pasteurized products. And so, yeah, I definitely didn't want that misconception to be made. I'm not saying pasteurized products are wholly and without fault either. Okay, so food for thought. Shoot. So I made this point already. Populations have changed, milk systems have changed, and prevalent food pathogens are changing. So the leading food pathogens, is it Salmonella now, but what was it before? It used to be tuberculosis. I think our methods for measuring these pathogens need to change. I think there are methods for understanding these pathogens in terms of the consumer knowing what they're at risk for need to change. And I'd like to kind of move into, all right, so what about our basic freedoms? We've kind of talked about the science, and I can make decisions pretty easily from a scientific point of view, but as soon as you start talking about making things illegal, people get really uncomfortable. I think that from here on out, the raw milk issue becomes a question of big government versus small government. Big consumption versus small consumption. What types of regulation do we want, and how much regulation do we need if people are still going to do things like march across state lines, buy milk, and bring it back? All right, so I hope that this is as up to date as it can be. But so there are a lot of different types of regulations. In some states, it is completely illegal to sell raw milk. In some states, a retail sale is legal. Farm sale can be legal. Herd sales can be legal. So, like, I'm not a farmer, but I own 50% of the cow on that guy's farm, and so I go over there and I buy his milk every Sunday. Some people say it's legal as pet food. All right, that is just sidestepping the issue completely. Or some states have no laws on herd shares, so in comparison to herd shares being legal. And so I think we really quickly get into, again, murky water, where if it's illegal to sell raw milk, so for example, I'll talk about the Hershberger case in a minute, then the lines are really clear. But when you start talking about, it's legal as pet food, okay, people are just gonna buy it and they're gonna feed it to their pet, and you're never gonna catch them drinking it. So I think we need to standardize the way that we're going to regulate this product. If you buy raw meat, it says right there on the package, or if you go to a restaurant and you order a rare steak, there's a little asterisk at the bottom of your menu, and it says, careful, because consumption of undercooked meat can lead to, health problems. Okay, put that on a container. If there's going to be a container for your raw milk, we have to regulate it. If not, illegalize it, and obviously that's not really working because people are still doing whatever they want. Then I would say that we need to make the call for government regulations to just step up and regulate what's going on. Okay, so Vernon Hershberger, and some of you have probably heard of this guy. In 2010, his farm in Wisconsin was raided. The government was made aware of the fact that he was selling raw milk. They seized a bunch of his product. They put it on, basically on lockdown. They, locked it in a cooler and closed it, and he couldn't break the seal and whatnot. And he was charged for selling raw milk in a retail location in Wisconsin. So in the state of Wisconsin, retail raw milk sales were illegal, except for rare incidences or happens chance. It's a very strange little sentence in legal doctrine. So it's sort of like, if you sell it by accident, that's okay. I don't know how you'd do that. Basically, you can't make your living selling raw milk. That's illegal. Okay, so he was acquitted in May of this year for 3 of those 4 charges. The jury found him not guilty of operating a farm store without a retail food permit. He was not guilty of operating a dairy farm without a milk producer license, and he was not guilty of operating a dairy plant facility without a license, regardless of the fact that when they went to raid his farm, they found milk and raw milk products with pricing labels, and in a single month, he made $25,000 worth of income. So yeah, he's got a family of 10, so maybe that's not enough for them to live by, but I don't know, the lines get foggy on when it becomes a retail producer. He was found guilty of violating the hold order placed on his food. So the product that they locked up in a cooler, yeah, he got that back out and they consumed it, and he said that he meditated on it for a long time, but decided that he needed to feed his family of 10. And I can't really fault the guy for that, except that you picked food that would put you in jail for a year and fine you $1,000, so that's not really helping your family of 10 either. So I will also say that I think sometimes farmers really get it hard. And so if you read any of the books that are out there about raw milk, a lot of time is spent saying, okay, the farmers really get it rough. They get treated like dirt. They get fined up the wazoo. They can't operate their facility anymore. And my response to that is, yeah, we need regulation. If we had regulation in place to say that you need this amount of insurance if you're gonna sell this kind of product, and if this happens to someone who eats your product, then this is the kind of fine you're gonna get. If that was clearly stated, these problems would go away. We wouldn't have to raid people. Yeah. Okay, so some concluding thoughts, and I really hope that everyone's okay. I think that there's a balance between safety and choice. I think the idea of taking away the choice of what you consume is a dangerous idea, and a lot of people, especially in my generation, don't really like that. A lot of people don't like the idea of making it completely illegal and you can't have it, and it's like, okay, why? How much of a risk are you willing to take? And how much of a risk should you be allowed to inflict onto others? And by this, I mean new mothers. I think it's a dangerous area. Your child can't decide what you're giving them. Maybe they wouldn't want to drink raw milk. How much should the farmer be held accountable? People often think back to Peanut Corporation of America, the fact that CEO walks free today. Yeah, that's a shame. That shouldn't happen anymore. And regulations are changing to make sure that those kinds of things don't happen in the future. People who are responsible for food products that infect and harm and kill people are going to be held to a higher standard in the future. That's just the way government regulations are going. And should you be able to give this to your children? Okay, so with that, a few resources, and I'd be happy to take some questions or facilitate discussion.